So what is audio? So audio is produced by vibration as perceived by the sense of hearing. In multimedia, audio could come in a form of speech, sound effects, and also music score. So when we talk about audio, it's just, in layman's term, it's just vibration. When something moves or vibrates, it produces some sort of sound that is resonating with the air around us, and therefore this so-called air is, or vibration is, hitting our sensory, in the sensory part of our ear, so that we may perceive hearing. Kaya natin naririnig dahil the so-called energy transfer from one object to another, transmitted by a medium using air, or solid, liquid, or gas, any form of matter, then perceived by our ears. So that's the so-called magic of audio. Why we hear things and why we create these so-called voices, speech, and music. It's all about vibration or movement. So, and another trivia or some other facts. Did you know that sound travels faster through solid rather than gas? For example, if you stamp on something, you will actually feel it first before your ear can hear it through air, because energy transfers faster to solid objects. Why? Because the molecules in the solid object is closely connected with each other. They are tightly packed together, so that if you transfer an energy or a movement to one molecule, it will directly affect the molecule beside it. Okay? That's why we cannot, actually there's a motto eh. I don't remember the movie, but in this movie they say that in space no one can hear you scream. Why? Because in a vacuum wherein there is no air, no matter, no matters, when we talk about matters, it's the science matters. So there's no matters to transfer the so-called energy or vibration to the from the sender to the receiving end. Because there's no air, you cannot send your speech in space. No one can hear you in a vacuum. Okay? So that's the science of audio. Okay? So let us continue. Examples of audio: music, speech, cries, howls, chirps, and noise. So music, using musical instrument, right? Or some sort of beat. Basta may beat siya, music na yun. Using our mouth, we can produce music. Speech depends on the language. If we're talking about English, it's English speech. It's Tagalog speech. As long as you're conveying information, spitting out words, it's considered as speech. Now, cries, howls, chirps, these are used by animals and babies wherein they are not capable of speech just yet because they just don't know how to spell out the words. While noise are perceived by what you call this, unwanted vibrations. For example, an electric fan, an air conditioning unit, a car engine, a train, right? Or for example, the murmuring of a volcano, an earthquake, electrical noise, right? So all of those are audio, whether pleasant or unpleasant. Anything that vibrates and produces this so-called energy transfer that we can hear are audio. Okay? So animation. So when we talk about animation, by meanings, the illusion of motion created by a consecutive display of image of static element. In multimedia, animation is used to further enhance the experience of the user in conveying information. So it's just an illusion. Animation is just an illusion. So actually, when we talk about animation, yung mga cartoons po ito. Cartoons, yung mga anime na pinapanood natin. So illustration is just an illusion of motion. So kung hindi pa po kayo, if you're not able to see this so-called animation studio, actually the artists there just draw the so-called 2D image drawings, sketch of those characters, and they draw the so-called series of images. Then they run it through a film or a camera, recording a camera, then in a series, so that if you view it in a timeline or a recording, a playback recording, you may perceive that the image is moving. But actually, it's just set of multiple images shown in a series, in a timeline, and your mind is telling you that this is moving. But actually, you're not viewing the same image. You're viewing multiple image in a given period of time. That's called frames. It depends on the so-called frames, how many frames. Our eyes on average can perceive up to 20 frames per second. So in meaning, sa mga gamers out there, di ba meron tayong tinatawag, we have the so-called FPS, 60 FPS, 120 FPS for those gamers. So those frames are actually static image that changes over time. So our eyes can just see up to 20 frames. Anything beyond 20 frames, we cannot see the transition or the change. Okay? Hindi natin nakikita yung bago, yung pagbabago dun sa image. So that's why most monitors are configured at 60 frames per second kasi hindi na mapaperceive ng mata yun. Okay? So for example, para mas maging malinaw sa iba, yan. So hopefully some of you tried this where you draw a stickman in a series of paper, then you try to quickly move along the pages wherein the man or the stickman is moving, dancing, or walking. That's the illusion of animation, wherein multiple images is displayed in a series, and the eyes perceive it as moving, while in reality, it's just a static object, several static images shown in a time. Okay? So, additional point, that's why yung mga gamers ulit, sorry for the term, is perceive lag. Yung word na lag, yung slowing down of the so-called frames or display because the frames is dropping. So if it goes down below 20, we can see that changes from one frame to the other. So that's what we determine as lag. Okay? So next. Anyway, so that's animation. Next is video. So what is the difference between video and animation? So first of all, let me define video. Video is the technology of capturing, recording, processing, transmitting, and reconstructing of moving picture. Video is more towards the photorealistic image sequence live recording as in comparison to animation. Video also takes a lot of storage space, so plan carefully before you're going to use it. So when we talk about video pala, it's about recording or processing, transmitting, reconstructing of moving objects or moving pictures. So in real time. So when we talk about video, there's actually something moving in the so-called film. So in order for you to record a moving object, you need a camera or some sort of hardware for you to take this so-called video and store it in a given storage. Actually, in the early days, there's no such thing as recording. Ang available lang that time, as far as I can remember, is live streaming, wherein when you record or you shot a video, it is automatically transmitted through through the lines, the mga posts, then viewed in a television. Hindi pa kasi na-invento din yung tape. Films, wala pa. Unang na-invento ang video capturing device kaysa sa video recording device. Sony yata as far as I can remember. Sony is the one who discovered the so-called video recording technology. So besides that trivia, so you need something moving for you to record or capture a video presentation or a video recording. So let us compare video and image versus drawing and animation. So when we talk about video and images, so images and videos are real time. So it's based on reality. So ano po ba yung images? Yung images po na we're talking about here is the photography. Yung selfie picture mo ng 5 years old ka, ng birthday mo, yung picture ng paligid, those images captured by a hardware or a camera, then recorded. So that's the image. Video, meaning yun yung ni-record using, for example, the Avenger. Actually, when we talk about the Avenger, an example of the Avenger is actually multimedia. Later on, I'll explain ano ba yung Avenger. Bakit siya naging multimedia, hindi na lang siyang video. Okay? Well, drawing is man-made or fictional. So when we talk about drawing, it's the product of someone's imagination put into reality, wherein you sketch a character. For this one, this is Cloud, Final Fantasy VII. So the left side is the so-called character, a person cosplaying the so-called character in the right side. So animation, as we discussed earlier, is just a combination of static images put together and shown in a given period of time, also representing a frame, several frames for it to create an illusion of motion. So these are the difference between video and images. So can you see the difference? So in this example, actually, it is very easy to spot the real person to the animation. Okay, it is very easy to spot the character, the real person to the animation. Okay, so let us see another example. So this is a movie from 2019, I believe. So Alita ba to? Alita. Okay. So in the left side, it's the real person, and the right side, it's the animated person or an animated character. But as comparison goes, we can see that there's a huge improvement when it comes to animation. Our animated character is now looking like the actual person because of advancement in technology. So therefore, there will come a time that we will no longer be able to perceive using our naked eye the difference between the real person and the animated person. So before we end this, so before we go on to hypermedia, let me explain the so-called Avengers. So by meaning, multimedia, multimedia is a combination of text, graphics, sound, animation, and video. In the Avengers, there's so-called CGI or special effects, wherein some characters are animated and some are shot as regular actors doing stunts and actions and movement. So it's a combination of animation, graphics, sound, and other effects. So that makes it a multimedia for entertainment. So let us move on to our second to the last topic, hypermedia. So when we talk about hypermedia, it's a combination of hypertext, graphics, audio, video, linked together and interactively culminating in a complete non-linear computer-based experience. So ano po ba yung example nito? So actually yung LMS natin, itong learning modules natin, is an example of hypermedia. Why? Because you can click a module and it will directly link you to a text-based image wherein you can read those texts for you to gain information regarding the lesson. If you click the link to a video presentation, it will link you to YouTube or various video content where you can watch and listen to those tutorials, and others they can link you to some recordings, video, or in this case our link, this link has directed you to me wherein I'm presenting a live feed to your end, to your cell phone or to your computer. So this is a video conferencing, so I'm a real actor, hindi ako animated na character. So it's multimedia. Yun yung example ng hypermedia. It's a combination of the so-called graphics, audio, video, and culminated. And when we talk about hypermedia, it is a non-linear. Ibig sabihin, pwede kang mag-interact with the so-called elements. For example, yung elements mo, yung quiz mo, pwede mong sagutan. Ako, pwede mo akong i-chat, pwede mo akong tanungin. There's interaction. So it is a hypermedia. Okay, malinaw? So next, let us discuss the difference between linear and non-linear. So there are two types of multimedia project. So linear, a multimedia project is identified as linear when it is not interactive. User has no control over the content that is being shown to them. Examples, movies and non-interactive demo or lecture. So pag linear pala, multimedia pa rin siya. It is still considered as multimedia. Just like the Avengers, watching an Avenger movie in SM Cinema. It's an example of linear multimedia project wherein there's several things that going into your mind. The actors, the sound, the explosion, the conflict, the story. It's all, you're getting all the information while you're doing nothing, just sitting. You're not asking them. So there's no interaction between the viewer and the so-called presentation. So that's an example of linear. While the non-linear is a multimedia identified as non-linear when it is interactive. A user has control over the content is being shown to them. Users are given navigation control. So for example, you're playing an RPG game. For example, Example, Zelda, Legend, Breath of the Wild, Pokemon, what else? Ano po mga Witcher 3, Witcher 4 na ba? So yon. So examples of games wherein you can alter or influence the storyline. You can change the outcome of the so-called action. So interactive CD, mga installer, where you have a choice wherein what specific software you want to install or modify. So that's an example of nonlinear. Our LMS is an example of nonlinear. Okay? Siguro linear when it comes to lesson, pero when it comes to different interaction like the Zoom, the quizzes, exams, video, it's interactive wherein you can pause, start, restart, and try again. Okay? So importance of multimedia. There are a number of fields where multimedia could be used. Some examples are business. So again, like my example earlier, postcards, business cards, advertisement ads. So using text, graphics, commercials. So actually, pag mapapansin niya, if you would observe, if you watch your television, isang channel na lang yata natira, GMA, Channel 5. So most of the commercial these days is about viruses. Lysol, Tide antivirus, Colgate, may Colgate antivirus ba? Or different types of antiviruses because of the COVID-19 threat. So the business is adjusting to the norms, to the trends of the society. So using those media, multimedia, they're presenting their products in their business plans, in their business goals. Next, education. Just like this one, our Zoom meeting, we make use of the so-called media, a medium, using Zoom, YouTube, modules, and so on for education. Entertainment, just like the Avengers, games, you're playing while at home. Medical fields, X-ray for digital image, ECG to the echo, right? Using a stethoscope to listen to one's lungs or heart. And public places such as bus station, train station, where there's information, warning, voices that are arriving to a certain station. Lahat po ng bababa sa karyado, baba na po, karyado na po. Yun, public places. Conclusion, multimedia plays a vital role in providing us with information. It is almost impossible to live our lives without the presence of multimedia. Multimedia makes our lives a little bit more colorful, enjoyable, and meaningful. Pitch, the highness or lowness of sound. So another properties of sound wherein most commonly known for the so-called ladies, sa mga babae, they have the so-called higher pitch, mas mataas yung frequency nila. Tapos tayo namang mga lalaki, we have the so-called low pitch, mas mababa. So if you draw those pitch in a diagram, so ganito yung itsura niya. So mas maraming up and down yung mga babae because they have higher pitch, while yung mga lalaki, mas konti yung waves natin na up and down when it comes to when it comes to frequency. Okay? Mas matining yung higher pitch, tas mas mababaw naman, mas flat yung lower pitch. So usually, yung mga lower pitch, ito yung mga low frequency sound, ito yung mga, ano ba example nito? Ano ba ang use ng low frequency sound? So, mga dog whistle, dog whisperer, they use the so-called low pitch sounds or low frequency sound in order to communicate with dogs. Kasi the dogs have this so-called sensitive hearing when it comes to low frequency sounds. Kaya meron tayong tinatawag na dog whistle. Pag bilinaw mo yung dog whistle, when you use the so-called dog whistle, hindi naririnig ng human, ng tao. Pero mga aso, naririnig nila yun because they are capable of hearing those frequency below our average range. So when it comes to high frequency sound naman, ano naman po ang example ng properties ng high frequency sound? So usually, yung mga nakakabasag ng bintana, grabe naman nakakabasag ng bintana talaga, nakakabasag ng baso, ng glass, mga high frequency yon. Okay? High frequency, yung gamit na pitch para makabasag ng glass kasi mas mataas yung oscillation niya, mas mataas yung vibration niya. So hindi nakakasabay yung solid object. So therefore, they have this so-called tendency to break because they cannot contain this so-called energy or transfer this energy in a timely manner. Frequency is the number of sound wave that passes through a point in a certain amount of time, such as a second. So the greater the frequency, the higher the pitch. So relative ang frequency sa pitch. So frequency and pitch is measured in hertz. Okay, so yon. So ito po yung average range natin. Human can hear sound ranging from 20 Hz up to 20,000 Hz. So 20 kilohertz hanggang 20 kilohertz kaya nating marinig. Okay? So ito po yung mga example ng mga different animals. Tapos kung ano yung tunog nila, yung voice nila. So, medyo maliit pero basahin ko na lang. Example, yung pinakamababa is yung tuna which is around 50 Hz. Yung chicken around 125 Hz. Tapos tayong human is around 31 to 19 kilohertz. So kaya nating sumigaw mula 31 Hz, yun yung normal speaking voice natin or whisper natin, up to 19 kilohertz or 19,000 Hz. So yun yung frequency range natin. Medyo malaki. So while the dog has this capacity to so-called produce 64 to 44 kilohertz. Loudness and softness. So yung lakas, yung volume. So when it comes to the loudness and softness, those are measured by decibels. So with a symbol small d with capital D. It's a relative unit of measurement corresponding to the tenth of the bell. It is used to express the ratio of one value of power or field quantity to another, logarithmic scale and logarithmic quantity being called the power level or field level respectively. So yung decibel na to, nag-originate to dun sa mismong word na bell. So wherein relevant siya to the 10th value no bell. So and so forth, ang nangyari na nun, tinawag na nila yung measurement na sound is decibel. So meron lang parang range wherein acceptable yung decibels or yung volume ng sound for us to be in a safe zone. Kasi again, just what I've said earlier, may danger yung masyadong malakas na tunog or high decibel na sound. So, in the next chart, we will see the level of decibels and what it can do to the human or to our body. So, 10 decibel breathing, yung paghinga natin, 10 decibel daw yung. Whispering, 20 decibel. So inside the library, 30. Inside an office, 50. Conversation, normal chatting, pag-usap, 60. 65 piano. Alarm clock, 75. So yung alarm clock, medyo nakakainis na yun. 75. 80, vacuum cleaner. So blender, siguro maingay na blender ito or factory noise, may makina, sound of engine, 100. So, may permitted per day siya. Pero syempre, nagkakaroon na tayo ng malaking problema when it comes to 110 pataas. So 110 power saw, mga chainsaw. 115, hindi na natin kinakaya yan. Ang usually ang rock band kasi nasa 110 to 140. So pag tumutok ka dun sa harap mismo ng speaker, yung mga large speaker, mabibingi ka talaga. So mga disco, loud bars, music, shotgun, 120. So 140, rock concert. Tapos 150, chest begins to vibrate. If you've been in a live concert, merong feeling wherein yung puso mo, your heart, feels the vibration of the ground. So parang yung sound na absorb na ng lungs mo or ng heart mo. So yun yung 150. Actually, hindi ka dapat ma-expose doon kasi nagkakaroon ng damage sa hearing mo yun. The loudest possible sound is 190. So the speed of sound depends on the types of medium, temperature, density, and elasticity. So as I mentioned earlier, the types of medium is solid, liquid, or gas. So sound travels faster in a solid in comparison to the liquid and in comparison with a gas. In the gas, it's the slowest. Okay, temperature, the higher the temperature, the faster is the sound. So when it comes to density, the amount, again, pag nasa vacuum ka, walang matter, hindi makakapag-travel. So pag less yung density ng matter, mas likely na bumabagal yung travel ng sound and elasticity. So sabi sa libro na binasa ko, travels faster in elastic object if it will travel through the elastic. Other method is the so-called elasticity is an absorbing materials for the sound not to be transferred through. So ang nangyayari, parang dampening material ang nangyayari sa elastic materials. They absorb the so-called wave because the sound travels to the elastic materials. Therefore, it absorbs the energy. Okay, matatapos na tayo. Last 3 slides. Doppler effect. So the Doppler effect explains the change in the frequency of sound as it moves past by a stationary object. Moving towards you, the pitch sounds higher, while moving away from you, the pitch sounds lower. So ang example lang po ng Doppler effect is, for example, may ambulansya or there's a ambulance or a fireman's truck moving towards you, then going past by you. As the trucks or the car or the siren travels to you, lumalakas yung tunog niya. Tumataas yung pitch. Pero while it travels away from you, yung pitch medyo bumababa, nagplat-plat. Okay? So ang tawag po natin yon Doppler effect. Doppler effect happens because as sound travels through air, water, or solids, it loses energy. As it loses energy, the pitch decreases. Okay? Bumabagal siya. Katulad ng example natin yung ocean wave. Pag nagsisimula pa lang yung ocean wave, tapos binubugahan siya ng hangin, tumataas siya. Pero habang lumalayo na siya, pumapalapit na siya sa dalampasigan, bumababa na yung waves because they lose energy over time. Okay? So next, noise and interference. So a noise is a sound, especially one that is louder and pleasant or that cause disturbances. So yung noise, yun nga, yung hissing sound, electrical static sound. So when you are in a recording industry or meron kang ginagawa, it's best practice to eliminate this so-called noise as much as possible so that your listener will hear you loud and clear. So para mas maganda yung dating. So and lastly, interference, the action of interfering or the process of being interfered width. So yun nga, again, yung example ko kanina, yung pag may waves na sumasabay in parallel to the sound or the waves you are producing or going against you, nakaka-cancel out po yun. Nai-interfere ka. Okay? So thank you for listening. So if you have any questions, you may reach me at mjarle@amais.edu.ph. So again, my name is Mark Jason Arley. So I'm your OLC for this so-called virtual session. So again, thank you guys for coming and have a blessed day. Thank you.